Hello and welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Today we're continuing our State of the Industry interviews and we're interviewing the lovely Joanna Penn. So we're so excited to have you here, Joanna. Welcome.
Thanks so much. It's great to be back on this different show. I mean, we've known each other, all the boys and me anyway, for many years now. So it's always like good to catch up.
Yeah, I think of you as like the kind of the North Star of the industry. Like you've been there, you predated us and we were there at the beginning and you were already at it. And, we haven't been as straight and narrow. Like we've been flighty, we do this, we do that. And it took us a long time to kind of figure out what we were good at. You've been so steady. Like you have just really known what you're great at and expanded those things over time. And it really is awesome, because if you look at the beginning, there aren't a lot of people who were voices in the beginning who are still here a decade later doing it better than ever. And you've just always been a North Star, a compass for, I think, the whole industry. And just thank you for your steady heartbeat with it.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I think it really comes down, I mean, like people all the time say, oh, what have you done? I'm like, literally, I mean, you guys wrote the book on Write, Publish, Repeat. I mean, that's basically what I've just done now for 12 years. And also, I guess I'm coming up to episode 500 on my podcast. It will be out by the time this goes out. So I've literally, all I've done is write and podcast consistently for over a decade. And I think that's actually a good tip for people. Like if you want a career, then it literally is just keep going for the long term. And if you love it, which, we do, we're still here, it will work eventually. Like you can, you can leave your job if you want to, but it took me 5 years. You can make a good living, but it takes a while. You can make money even podcasting, but it takes a while and you have to be focused, as you say. So I don't think I've done particularly anything special. I've just been here a long time and just kept doing it consistently.
Yeah, but that in itself is special. And also you have a lot of emotional fitness, which is important in this business. So you know what you're good at and you know what to say no to.
Our follow-up book should be Write, Publish, Repeat, and do a whole bunch of other shit because Sean can't say no.
Right. No, exactly. I mean, I remember it may have been the first time we ever had you on. And there was a little side project that we were already working on. And you were flirting with doing something in the same space. But that idea lasted for like an hour and a half. And you're like, nope, it's not part of my core focus. I'm going to do this other thing. And like, that's hard enough, I think, for a person to stay on the straight and narrow for that period of time. But if you take someone like you, who is an idea person, like, a good idea when you see it, and you've had 500 episodes, you've talked to a lot of really smart people doing a lot of really cool shit, that has to be like, well, maybe I should be doing that.
And she even talked to me, so not all smart people.
So like that is remarkable. And I think that it's very easy to try a bunch of different things. One of the books that we wrote last year was a little parable called A Tale of Two Authors. And it's exactly that. It's like author A who comes out wants to try this genre because it's hot and this genre because it's hot. And, oh, maybe I could do that. Versus the other author who's just, I'm just going to write a book or two every year and just build my fan base. And at the end, this person's maybe written 53 books and this person has a dozen, but the person with a dozen actually has a career. And, what you did is just constantly row. And that is very admirable.
Oh, well, again, another tip for people. I mean, I've made all the mistakes like everybody else. I don't want you to make me out to be some kind of paragon of virtue. I mean, Dave and
perfect. Stop.
Dave and I talked on my show about writing our darkness. And I know you urged Dave to write that book. It's an excellent book. And, I write from horror on the one side through crime and thriller and action adventure. Now I write fantasy as well. Like I feel with my fiction particularly, and I know you guys have a similar issue. I mean, we like so many genres, and so I write in so many genres, and I'm very glad I set up 2 pen names at least for my non-fiction and my fiction. But it's so interesting, the more we go on, I almost feel like having more author names is really good around the different genres of fiction. I'm still thinking about that idea. But I think when you love what you do for the long term, I don't really think you can just write the same book over and over again. And you guys do lots of different things. But I think that's important as well. Like, I don't think you can sustain this for the long term if you're just writing to market. And absolutely, lots of people are very successful that way. But are they successful for a decade or 20 years or 30 years, like the people I particularly follow in the niche? Christine Catherine Rush, Dean Wesley Smith, my friend Orna Ross here in the UK, people who've been in the industry way longer than us, who have gone through all the ups and downs, and they are still making money, and they are still publishing, and they see some of the stuff we do as indies and just go, yeah, just wait till the next roller coaster wave comes on through. And so like right now we're recording this, it's still a pandemic. I mean, it's kind of a weird time, and it's a downtime in history maybe, but it's a hell of an uptime in terms of digital sales. Yeah. So it's like, and the authors who only have books in the bookstore are really struggling, whereas people like us who write and publish and market online are doing better than ever. So it's I think if you can ride these ups and downs, as you say, emotional ups and downs, but also the industry, then you can have this long-term career.
Well, you're really good at seeing that timeline. I've always appreciated your future thinking. I mean, you're just top tier at that, but you also now have a decade plus of being here and doing it and publishing. So what's the biggest change you've seen in that time? And then let's talk about where it's going. But first, just in the first 10 years, what have you seen? What's the thing that surprised you the most? And what's the thing that hasn't surprised you at all?
Well, I think the biggest thing for independent authors was Kindle Unlimited. A decade ago, when we kind of hung out first, the big shift was traditional publishing versus self-publishing, and there was this sort of either or mentality. There were a few bust ups on the internet and all of that, and there was a bit of argy-bargy there. That's not the thing anymore, as far as I can tell. The thing now is the exclusive versus wide situation, and the people who go all in. I mean, you can tell the difference between books written for KU and books written for a wider market, or but what's interesting, and I should be very clear, I am not anti subscription. I think subscription is probably the future for all things digital. I mean, audiobooks and, ebooks and Scribd and Kobo Plus and all this. That's just, Spotify. I think Spotify, we'll come back to audio, but, there are lots of things where subscription is great, but I dislike exclusivity. Now, I say that also with a caveat. So none of my JF Penn books, my fiction, and none of my non-fiction is currently in KU. But I did help my mum co-write some sweet romance. And my mum is 72. She doesn't want to do any marketing. She doesn't want to do any PR. She does not want to be known as an author of anything. She just wants to have some books out, and she wants to make a little bit of money. So I put those books in KU. So there's Penny Appleton, is sweet romance, and I put them in KU. That's a great
pen name.
Oh yeah, thanks. Well, so Penny Appleton, very English, but we literally all we do, put them in KU and put some auto ads on, and that pen name just sells through auto ads. And so I'm very grateful to KU for my mum's income, but in terms of a long-term career over, I'm 45 for the next 45 years, then that's why I publish wide. So, but I think in terms of coming back to your question, this is a long-term thinking thing. I think, like, you can go into KU, everyone's like, oh, well, you just go in for 90 days, but most people don't. Most people are actually creating a business around KU. So, and
that's really hard to move.
Yeah, exactly. It's so hard to move because you have to take a short-term dip in order to build long-term, and you have to do marketing differently. You have to think differently. I think it's a mindset. I think thinking wide is a mindset, and I'm going to have to blame you Americans, because I think most authors who are not American do, think wider than Amazon, because we have a bigger,
totally agree with
bigger
that.
ecosystem. Yeah. But still, the biggest market is the US at the moment. So this is another thing that's changed, obviously, over the last decade, is it's gone gone from just being the US to being truly global. So I've now sold books in over 140 countries. And, you know, you can only really do that if you have this kind of long-term view. So I would say that that is the biggest thing that changed. And we all saw it. It was 2014, we saw a drop in our income when KU came, and if we didn't sign up, which I didn't. So, and, you know, so that, I think that's interesting. And what I see now is that's becoming quite contentious in the community. That's now the split. The split is KU versus wide.
Yeah, and for us, I like what you just said about the difference between KU books and wide books, because they are written differently. And we haven't had a lot of success in KU historically, because we try to put books that really are not meant for that ecosystem in that ecosystem, and they get buried. You know, the visibility is terrible. And one other big giant change that's happened is that it's pay to play now. And it's not good enough to put out a great book and have your list, you know, tickle the algorithms. There's money, there's ads, like there has to be that kind of churn.
But I don't think that is new for anywhere else. Everyone just got used to Amazon, like, oh, you upload a book and you put it at 99 cents and, like, you know, oh, it gets to the top of the charts.
They got spoiled fast.
Yeah, but everywhere else, for you know, we met before you even published, you know, on Copyblogger and stuff like that. Back in the day, I mean, everybody thought pay-per-click ads are nothing new. So the thing that changed was Amazon, but we always had to do merchandising on Kobo or Apple or any other store that didn't have more of this algorithmic thing. So I think you're right that, well, the change that has happened is that that organic reach has kind of disappeared, but it's also disappeared in social media. It's also disappeared in podcasting. It's disappeared everywhere. So
it really is a bring your own traffic world now. Yes,
absolutely. Sorry, Dave. Hi, Dave. Did you want to say something?
No.
Well, there was a sort of time where all of the platforms were busy growing, and they were all trying to get as much audience as they could. And in that time, everything seemed to be free. You know, they wanted you to set up your Facebook fan page and build an audience there. And then they wanted you to, you know, put your books on Amazon and be exclusive and build your audience there. But it seems like now so many of the platforms are like, okay, how do we monetize? And monetization has become so important to them. Like once they have become these monsters, they're like, okay, now how do we punch all the money out of everybody? And so it is the same. It's the same if you have a Facebook fan page. Now you have to pay in order to reach the people who said they wanted to connect with you. And it is the same on Amazon, which is both, like, it's sad if you're like, oh, the good old days, but also it is a pattern that you see consistently across any platform that has ever sort of been online, like Google.
And I completely disagree with the good old days being past. I think we haven't even started there.
Yes.
Like, we have not even started yet. I mean, what we've had in the last, the other thing that's happened in the last decade is a maturation of the independent author space. And we have pretty much all the tools we need now. I mean, in all the different areas, and they're just getting better and better all the time. The AI assisted algorithmic marketing is also getting better, which I really appreciate. And I think this is some of the future stuff. But, you know, we also have more readers than ever. And I mean, what's so, again, encouraging, silver lining of the pandemic is the adoption of digital in those markets that have resisted it. France, Germany, Spain, Italy, in Europe, it's taking off. And this is very exciting because these markets have not wanted digital and they've been protecting their physical ecosystem. And so I think the good, like literally, I mean, we're going to have 4G internet across the whole world by 2025. I think that we are not even in the space where this is going to take off yet. So that's why I'm excited.
Yeah, we're in the first hour of the first day of this stuff, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, I do think Jeff Bezos is a fantastic entrepreneur. And I mean, he says it's always day one. And that's kind of how I feel. I feel like I'm always learning, there's always something new. Like this week, it was GPT-3 in the AI space, which is, I think, going to be a huge impact over the next decade. But it's just like, well, every week there's something new. I mean, BookBub ads, which are just brilliant, they just added in, you know, related authors into the ads, and that's so helpful. I was on there before this, I was like going through my BookBub pay-per-click ads and like, oh, there's an author I'd never heard of. Oh, you know, so I think the good old days, people, unfortunately, people who talk about the good old days are old people like us, like old in terms of the industry, and we can still remember that. But I actually think, you know, perhaps it's better than ever.
But I totally agree with that. But I also think that in the author space, there tends to be a temperature of, I don't know, it's like the sky is falling, or I'm missing out, or
back in my day, Pixeling could get you $10,000 in a weekend.
Comparisonitis. This person is making this much, and it's like they have a different strategy than you. They have a different life than you. They have a different brain than you. And so it's like that, always looking for some right way to do things. And that's not reasonable.
No, fair enough. I try and stay away from that, to be honest. I mean, another thing that's changed is, again, I think we all probably met on Twitter, or we connected on Twitter back in the day. I got on Twitter in 2009, and it was the way I met most people back then. Now I am barely on social media. Yeah. I literally, like, I wrote down, again, silver lining in the pandemic, I've been cutting and cutting and cutting down to what is core. And what is core for me is writing books and podcasting. And that really is. And then I connect, you know, in my email and everything. But I think social media is, if you love it, you love it. But right now it's a very angry and difficult time in the world.
It's ugly and distracting.
Distracting, I think, is the point. And I just prefer my happy side of the internet. And
Right.
This is again about the curation of what we put out in the world. That is something I've been very careful over the last decade. Is I am generally a happy, positive person, and that's what I want to put out in the world. Even though I write some quite dark books, which, you know, bonding with Dave over. But, you know, that's kind of my other side. But the side I put out, into the energy I put out, is positive. And I think if you put out positive energy, it comes back. And, you know, social karma, or whatever you want to call it. But that's kind of how I prefer to do it. And I think I would urge people listening, if you feel like really, what do you want? Like, do you want to get in an argument on Twitter, or do you want to, or, you know, let's take a big thing that people are caring a lot about, you know, Black Lives Matter, for example, or healthcare, or the ecological system, climate change. Do you want to get in an argument on Twitter, or do you want to write a book, a novel, where a character solves the problem that you want to solve in the world, or, you know, have a person of color as the hero or the heroine, or someone saving the planet, or whatever? So that to me is, and I prefer I mean, I prefer writing about it. I don't want to get into an argument. So I think you have to choose where you express yourself, and in order to protect your creative muse, and also to just focus, we just don't have enough time, you know.
So, well, I think it's a matter of scaling your opinion or your idea. If you get in an argument with somebody on Twitter, it was a subtraction to your day, and now it's just there and done. Where if you take that same energy and ideas and put it in your story, you've scaled your opinion. It's permanent now. It's out there. It's become a story that's maybe helped to change someone, the way they think, but not one person. Everyone who read that book has that opportunity. Dave, you were going to say something.
Well, yeah, with the increase of it being pay to play now, and social media being much more difficult to break in, I think Instagram is good for like art and photography and stuff like that. I think it's still easier to break in there for that stuff. But for authors who don't know how to break in, they can't yet pay to play, what are their options for getting out there and getting known?
Again, I don't think it's changed. I think from day one, not from day one, I put my first book in my series on perma-free pretty early. I still think that perma-free, first in series, if you're going wide, is a really good idea. And if you're in KDP Select, then you use your 5 free days. And if you connect a perma-free or 3 days book, good book with a good cover that's edited well, if you connect that at the back to some kind of email list, it's a very slow build, but it still works. And then if you do have a little bit of money, even like $100, you use something like Free Booksy. I think Free Booksy is brilliant. Bargain Booksy, I use them regularly. I've got another one next week. And in fact, I've got a Free Booksy on my Stone of Fire, my perma-free first in series next week. And I just keep, and that gets people into a 10-book series. So I don't think that's any different to someone starting now. What you have to do is have that long-term view, and it's slow. It's super slow, right? But it's just how it was when we were starting, because there was no ecosystem. So I think it took me probably 4 years as JF Penn to get to maybe 500 or 1,000 people on my email list. And then, of course, it's that snowball and snowball. But if you don't have a long-term view, that's, Dave, to your question, that's why people go, well, that's not quick enough. If I put, well, one, I don't want to put my book as free.
It's failing because it hasn't worked yet.
Exactly. But I don't want to put my first and only book as free. Well, what else have you got to offer? And second, I don't want to, how that's really, really slow. Well, then do you have any money to put on it? And if you don't, well, then write the next book in that series. I do think, of course, people should write their standalones, but you guys know as well how much harder it is to sell a standalone as an indie than it is to sell books in a series. I mean, even like I now have, like behind me, I have some of my stock.
How convenient.
Yes, how convenient.
It's almost like, you planned it or something.
Planned it, yeah. But my Map Walker fantasy series, so Map of Shadows there, I'm just now running ads to book one, because I know, paid ads, because I know it works as a trilogy and people will go through them. And so I know that putting the ads on book one in the series is important. So that works if you're just starting out. And then I still believe in content marketing, mainly for non-fiction, but equally I've started a new podcast, Books and Travel, where I talk to writers about the travel inspirations behind their books, and also talk about my own travels.
That's really fitting. That's great.
Thank you. Well, when I thought about it, I was like, I love podcasting. It's part of my
it's really focused. It's what you're saying, podcasting and writing. It goes right in there. There's no art. There's no justification you have to make to yourself.
Well, obviously, Books and Travel doesn't make money on its own yet, but it took me 6 years to make money out of a Creative Penn podcast. And again, it's kind of this longer term view of where do you want to position yourself over the long term. So I'm not in any hurry with Books and Travel. But what is interesting, and let's circle back to what hasn't changed. I believe that the idea of 1,000 true fans, which we all know from the early days, 2006, I think Kevin Kelly, or 2004, he put that out really early. I think that's where we are again. I think we're back to 1,000 true fans, and we've kind of forgotten it. Like, everyone got obsessed with mass market sales and big this and big that. But I think we're back in 1,000 true fans, because the world is splintered. What we watch is splintered. What we read is splintered. So if you find we're living in the long tail now, it's just taken a bit of time to realize. But then if you consider that 1,000 true fans, then satisfying them instead of trying to compete at the top of the charts. Like, why are people obsessed with that? It's ridiculous.
Right. Because it's ego. Like, every industry has ego. People have ego. But if you take your ego out of it, it is easier to think long-term. It is easier to think about the reader instead of yourself. Because I think that's it too. The real secret here is, how do you get those 1,000 fans? You be great. You provide a really good reader experience. And it's not just about the quality of your writing. It's about the way you communicate with them, the kinds of stories you tell. And that is long-term. And it is 1,000 true fans can get you so far, but it feels really good to be number whatever in the store, right? If that's where you're.
It's actually something you can measure. So if you're using your podcast as a great way to connect to your nonfiction audience, and obviously the Travels podcast will become a connection tool with readers. Right now, do you use email or what would you say you do to connect to your existing readers of your fiction books right now?
Yeah, it's primarily email. I do have a Facebook page, and I do have an Instagram at JF Penn Author, but it's mainly email. So I think providing with fiction, writing the books and having a good email list is literally, and paid ads plus paid ads, is a good ecosystem. But the reason why I wanted to equate 1,000 True Fans with the podcast is because it's going to get harder and harder and harder. It has got harder and harder to stand out in a very crowded market. And the GPT-3, if you guys don't know, is the latest iteration of the natural language generation AI, which is 100 times better than what it was last year.
Yeah, that space is so amazing.
It's crazy. And what that means is, you can't go faster than a bot. And even if it's not now, if it's 100 times next year and 100 times the next year, it ain't long. Then you've got AI translation, where you could have the market flooded by Chinese translated books. And you have to think, well, how can I stand out? And the only way to stand out is by being human, by being you. And the reason I still, pick up your books, why I saw Dave's book on writing darkness and emailed him like immediately, like, I want to talk to you about this. I still care about you guys because I've known you for over a decade, and I haven't read all your books. You've got way too many books, but I've read a number of your books.
Neither have I.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of books, but I've read, books by all of you individually, well, all of you and co-written, and I know something about the inside of your heads, and we've had chats and we've had drinks, and I think that with the podcast, what's interesting is people get to hear your voice. People get to hear you laugh. If on a video, they get to see your face, and that is the thing that makes people think of you more. So the idea of a podcast for me is just bringing people into that space where they can differentiate you from another thriller author, or I am not Lee Child, I am not Dan Brown, but you might like that, but so for me it's also taking it off the page into something more three-dimensional as such.
Yeah, one thing that you were talking about, I had this moment recently where Niamh and I are always future casting and talking about, priorities and one thing we're going to do and when we're going to do it. And we were talking about audio, and, we really want to get to audio, but we have so many titles and some of our old ACX stuff is expiring, and, there's some rights issues with other stuff we want to get back. And we just want to kind of do the audio thing. And it's this big overwhelming thing, and I was just having this, maybe that's one of those areas where we take our surefire hits, but everything else we just wait because X, Y, and Z is happening with audio. And I've been, in preparation for the state of the industry thing, I've been listening to the last year's worth of Mark Dawson's podcast, and you were on, and you were talking about audio, and I was walking down my street and I was like, literally like, yes, because you were saying all of these things that we had just talked about the future of audio. And what you're saying is that we all have these tools that we didn't have any tools. So even if ads have changed, even if, organic discoverability has changed, all of these changed, it's been compensated for by all these other things that have changed that are making it easier.
The system has never been better.
Yeah.
The system. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it's really easy to complain about what we're missing instead of what we have and all the opportunities. And I love that you're always redirecting. You're always redirecting the industry, guests, whatever, that, no, let's focus on the positive because there's so much good here. So what do you think is like little horizons? What does the industry look like? And I realize that COVID has totally kind of impacted this, So what does 1 year look like? What does 3 years look like to you, and 5?
Well, I'm always early. I mean, given that I've been podcasting since 2009, and you
jumped right on that bandwagon.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so funny because a lot of the mistakes I've made were because I was early. Like, I did German translation in 2014 and it just cost me money and was ridiculous. And then now I've published some books in German last year and got Amazon ads on them, and they're making me money. And I'm like, why did I do that so
well
early?
The Germans hadn't yet learned how to read in 2014.
Well, they also had not picked up the Kindle or the Tolino or any of that, and that's changed as well in the German market. But okay, so some of the things that are happening, I think, so one, the traditional publishers have woken up to digital, and that is going to mean a lot more competition for indies. So what's
the sky's falling.
Yeah, the sky's falling. But it's
again.
It's very interesting because Ingram Spark in the last couple of weeks. Now, I love Ingram Spark, is fantastic. I mean, my print sales are on a par, I think, with my audio. That, you know, print is just wide print through
fantastic.
Ingram. Oh yeah, print is incredible with Ingram, with their print on demand. You can do hardbacks too, which I love for ego reasons. But yeah, so basically what has happened, like the publishers have discovered print on demand as well as ebooks. Now, I fully expect, and I've already seen more indies getting approached by not just the Amazon imprints, but other imprints. So I think what we're going to see is some more consolidation. You know, we saw a big wave of that as a lot of indies went over to traditional, also vice versa. I think we've also seen a lot of traditionally published authors who are just making no money, and they will want to come into self-publishing. So that means more authors, and I personally believe that we're our own self-sustaining ecosystem because we all read and write books, and we all buy each other's books and stuff. So I don't think more authors is a problem, never have found that a problem, but I certainly think it will be more crowded. So that's why I'm really doubling down on this 1,000 True Fans thing, because I just think that is more important than ever. So you know, for my own ambition, it's more about creative ambition than and selling across all the stores. Things like Google Play I've found has really started getting better for me. You know, doing ads to different platforms and not just focusing on Amazon US all the time. So really just thinking a bit more, a bit wider in terms of where you can make your money. So you can make some money over here because none of the KU people can advertise to that because their books aren't there. So that's interesting. I think in the next year, I actually think in the next 2 years, I think Spotify will get into audio and audiobooks. I mean, obviously they pretty much own
You think
music.
they'll start dabbling in audio, do you?
Yeah, some kind of audio. But I mean, Michelle Obama's podcast launched today on Spotify, and of course they bought Joe Rogan for 100 million or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was a crazy deal, but it tells you where things are going.
Exactly. We've seen in the last week a couple of publishers have started a podcast network. So all the traditional publishing has suddenly discovered podcasting, which is you know, pretty funny.
Yeah, we had an offer to do some sort of like audio storytelling, and it was a shiny object. We couldn't justify it, so we didn't. But the numbers they were talking about were staggering. That basically it was a play to create something that would then get sold. You know. Yeah. And it was crazy, the numbers they were talking.
Well, that's what I want to do. So for me, I actually want to write. I've written some screenplays, I know, like you guys, but I want to adapt for audio drama, and because this is the other mindset shift about licensing. I think we have all got so obsessed with ebooks on Amazon, whereas actually that's not what we're creating. We're creating this intellectual property asset that we can use in all these different ways. And so if I have an idea, why can't I do it as an audio drama or do it as a podcast only series or whatever? So I actually think I hope that we're going to break out of this very siloed ebook KU focus and do some more exciting things, like proper independent creators who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And I think AI audio is a big thing. So I don't know if you guys have seen that Descript.com, which I use, they're absolutely fantastic. I've had a voice double for a while now, but they've just released voice double and the overdub feature into the market. So yesterday it became possible for everybody to have a voice double, and Descript is very cheap per month, and you can try it for free. So, you know, you guys can create a voice double and use it. So what I think is interesting is what that means. And me and Mark Lefebvre, Mark from Draft to Digital, are going to do an AR voice double conversation. That's going to come out hopefully in the next few weeks.
That's
We're going to just have our voice doubles talking to each other, because this is one of the things that will happen with audio is, you know, you should be able to license my voice to record it, or if I want to do an audio drama, the cost should come right down because I can license different voices instead of having to hire actors. Now, I'm not saying human narration is disappearing. Of course it's not. But
no,
I
but
believe
it's a different product. This isn't, it's not competition. It allows more things to get to the market.
Exactly. And if what we're seeing in some of the more audio first markets is that audio is the primary format. So ebooks are secondary to audio. So I think it's very important that we consider this. My husband now doesn't read with his eyes. He only reads with his ears, and he reads for hours every day. So this is the thing. I think we have to consider that this is now more normal. I mean, like I talk about Spotify because I use it. Their algorithm, their recommendation algorithm for audio is the best, and I've tried a lot of them. I seriously think that I want my audiobooks on Spotify, even if I get paid less. It's just about the licensing. So Dave says audio is the best thing. I'm going to license your voice, Dave.
No, that wasn't me. That was somebody in our chat.
I would
was it?
I would love to license Dave's. I would have Dave's voice just put me to sleep. I would have it read children's books to me, just for fun.
Clifford the big red goddamn dog.
So what's next 3 years from now? Like not quite a half decade, but 3 years is a long time. When you spoke at our first summit, I loved your presentation because it was all about how long a period of time 8 years is, right? And we've crossed half of that gap since, right? So this is the rest of that span.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. A lot of the things I think will happen next year will probably
be 3
will probably take three to 5 years. I mean, voice licensing. I tell you what, the biggest issue I feel right now is copyright law under a new world of AI. And I like my kind of utopia, because I can't see anyone stopping AI creation, is licensing. So that I think blockchain smart contracts are critical, like absolutely critical, that we have blockchain smart contracts that we can attach our IP to, and that goes through the supply chain of all of the various AIs that people are already using. I mean, I put this latest thing up on GPT-3 on Twitter, and someone said, "Oh, I've written a lit RPG novel using that." And I was like, "Oh, right, okay, it's already happening." And I mean, these are people who are admitting it. I mean, how many scammers are going to be doing this? So I'm like, okay, so what we need is more robust copyright and licensing in a world of AI. And that's not just around writers, it's around any creation, like Dave's artwork, for example, or this audio recording. Our voices are copyright. Like I belong to me. So if you want to use my voice, you should pay to license it. I should get some kind of micro payment. And I mean, we're already seeing the sort of you should get paid for use of your data. So I think is Andrew Yang one of your politicians? Yeah. Brilliant. Shame. Anyway.
Yeah, my daughter really wants him to be president.
We don't elect smart people here.
Well, I mean, I think he's saying, well, universal basic income, but also you should get paid for using Facebook because people are monetizing you. So what I see in our future is micro payments. Like you know, people are already used to getting a micro payment for their pages read, or we're used to that, or minutes listened, which I think in Kobo has started to do minutes or something. Might be wrong, don't quote me on that, but it's a kind of thing where I think we could get used to it. So if you want to use a GPT-3 model with my data in, I should get a micro payment for everything you produce out of that model. And I just think that is very important. And at the moment, I mean, there is a review of AI and copyright, but my fear is that they are just going to say it's not allowed. And of course, that doesn't stop anything. Right. What we should have is a way to be compensated as original creators in every way. So I think it's going to be a really interesting decade. Like, you ain't seen nothing yet. I think this next decade is very exciting. I am every day. I just think double down on being human, be more human.
Yes.
More human than
just
human.
like Yeah, just be really human and talk about issues and share photos of being really you. And I mean, my episode 500, which hasn't gone out yet as we're recording this, but I'm being really honest, and things are you know, changing in our life, me and my husband and stuff, and you can't replicate that with a bot. So
Yes.
you know, just being
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
writing too, you know.
So does something like deep fake fascinate, frighten, or inspire you? Like, where are you on that? Because to me, I'm fascinated, but also like just horrified.
Well, I mean, this is why Mark and I are going to do our voice double thing, because we already are deep fakeable. Like
Yeah.
you guys, even Dave, you only need like something like 3 minutes of voice
Yeah.
now to deep fake someone. So we're all deep fakeable. That's why it's
I've been using a
important.
decoy voice, so fuck
Yeah.
that.
Decoy voice, that's basically what it is. So but what you have to do is just like, that's why email I think is so good. It's quite a big overhead, but if people get a personal response to something and they see pictures of you, like I share pictures of me walking along the canal over and over again during lockdown and stuff like that, and that connection, hopefully then if there's a deep fake that comes out and I say something that is out of character, that will be evident, or people will be able to reach me. So yeah, the deep fake thing I believe is already past, as in that's all happening.
Mhm.
I mean, in China, you know, they have, I think it's Xiaomi bots is the new one. I mean, the journalism space is already full of this type of thing. So yeah, and I'm not, it doesn't scare me at all. It excites me very much. But what I think is, it is like a, you know, like a wave coming, and if unless you jump on the wave, you will be
So you can either
crushed.
like sit there on your board and wait for the wave and ride into it, or you can fight it, and you're not as powerful as nature, and you're going to get crushed.
Wait, can I make a deep fake to like do all the shit I don't want to do? Like family obligations and stuff?
Well, it's so funny because
A
my
friendly
husband,
Dave.
yeah, my husband actually said, "Oh, can we use that to generate things on our family WhatsApp?" You know, like, everyone's got a family WhatsApp in lockdown, and it's like you have to say certain things, nice picture, whatever. So you could just like generate these things. I think all that's
Perfect.
happening already.
Yeah, I think Dave needs a decoy, like a
Decoy
family
Dave.
liaison. Like, and that'd be great if it was AI, because then he wouldn't even have to talk to the human who was the liaison.
And then you
Yeah.
can be social
Two
distance from your family.
decoy, a decoy
Yeah.
and an AID. Yes, perfect.
But I know people always, you know, people listening, if they know me, I always talk about this stuff, and I report on it every few weeks on my show. And I find it fascinating, mainly because, as I said, I'm not threatened by it. And I think it doesn't stop us creating. We are creators, and we're going to keep creating. And our job is to do that. And, you know, we will find people over time. What has changed is you put out a book and you might make, like Dave said, you know, 10 grand in a weekend, you know, unless you have a big audience. But hey, that's okay, because you can do that over time. You can do that by building your backlist. You can bring in multiple streams of income in other ways. You know, we've all done that over the years. But licensing, I think, is really important. There are more and more places to license. I mean, think about it. Again, a decade ago, we didn't have all the streaming services like we do now, who potentially want to license our work. So it's really about thinking what you want to achieve as a writer, as a creative, and stepping towards that and using the tools along the way. So, you know, one of the great things about AI, as I said, was the auto ads. If we don't have to do the ad work,
Yes.
that is great.
Yes, right, because or the human part of the ad, you know, where it's that nuance that an AI could give you categories or certain boxes to tick, but that human stuff where there's just sometimes human insight means something different, or the way you change copy because it has like maybe a joke in it or something, you know, it's like it gives us more time to do that 2%, you know, which can really make a difference, because AI can't ever get there. Even if AI gets really, really good, it's that last 2% that makes us, that's our beating heart. That's what we could put out there. It's just different.
Although I would challenge you on that. For my non-fiction under Joanna Penn and Penny Appleton for my sweet romance, we don't do text. So you don't have, when you do Amazon ads, you don't have to use text. So we don't, and we just use auto ads. So the algorithm's doing all of it, and it
That's
makes money.
amazing.
Yes, that is the power of the also bought and the power of training an algorithm around who reads your books. So to me, the human bit for me is like the podcast, and some people hear about it through the podcast and because they're writers, and then they'll have bought other books or whatever. And so, but basically it's moved on that far. And I really think that, like, if you know, is this podcast on Spotify? Like, you know, mine is.
Not
and
yet, but I think it will be.
Well, yeah, you should definitely have your podcast on Spotify, because their search algorithm and their recommendation algorithm for podcasts is brilliant. So there's all this type of thing where I think the human aspect is not the copy or the recommendation necessarily.
So these auto ads actually scale themselves, they optimize themselves?
Oh, I mean, I've had to put, yeah, basically, but I've had to put a cap on. But what, they do not work for my JF Penn books. They do not work because
your genres are so
yes,
different.
yes.
So if someone's starting out, is auto, because I don't actually touch the ad side of things. So I'm wondering, is auto ad something that if I'm coming in as an author, it's just something I can tick on Amazon, or is there a tool that someone needs to use in order to implement that? Or how would
that is really a whole nother show, and you know, I'm not the ads expert, so
yeah,
I'll
I
leave
can
that
very
to
quickly
someone else.
answer that, Niamh. So what Danny actually runs auto ads. He does auto ads, but he uses it as data to then do better ads. Like, the auto ads have not been performing for us in that way, but I think it's like with what Jana just said, it's because our genres are more confused.
Yeah, you guys
right?
are all, and also I've read some of your fiction, and you're pretty cross genre like me.
Yeah.
You're even your so-called in genre books are
Right.
still pretty cross genre.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and so I think that confuses things over time, and that's why my JF Penn books, it just does not work. But say BookBub ads work really well. So this is the thing, you have to just coming back to the AI thing, it's about using the tools in the way that supports your career. The other reason I really like auto ads is I only look at them like once a week. I mean, and we barely look at the Joanna Penn ads because we trust them now. We just put a cap on so that it doesn't go nuts. But, you know, basically it just runs. And that's how I like to do marketing, not have a look at it, basically. And I mean, things like it's the same as autoresponders, right? We all know when you set up an email sequence and that all just happens in the background, and it's automating the things that we don't want to necessarily do, which is the wonderful side of all of these tools. You know, a tool like Vellum, which suddenly made formatting just brilliant.
Oh yeah,
for everyone. And so I want people to stay on the positive
Vellum
side.
made the world a better place.
Yeah, exactly. So let's stay on the positive side of the future and expect that there will be more and more tools that will help us, and it will change things. So your audiobook on Spotify, like many musicians find on Spotify, is not going to get paid much, but it might reach all these different places that we don't reach right now. I should say you cannot do audiobooks on Spotify right now unless it's a podcast, but I think that will happen in the next 2 years. Let's say 2 years, probably be longer.
What would be holding that up with audio? Is it just like rights, or is it a platform issue? Like they can't...
Oh, I think they're just focusing. They've only just started on podcasting.
Yeah.
You know, they only bought Anchor like I think a year and a half ago, something like that. So they're really focusing on podcasting now. But I think what they're going to see is podcasting and audiobooks are so closely related that they will inevitably move into that. And this is again another reason why being wide with audio is so great, because you can just jump in as soon as it's available. I mean, find a way is, you know, just fantastic. Library borrows, just brilliant. We never had that before. So very, very positive things in the industry, and I think only getting better.
I love your optimism. It's just so wonderfully infectious. Okay, we'll end on another optimistic note, and you can forecast. But just before that, is there anything negative you have to say? Because you are so optimistic. So is there a dark side to the industry? Is there something that you see as a red flag or something that we should be aware of? Even if it's just like the emotional health of the industry and the way people interact, anything like that.
No. No, I mean, of course there are always things going on, but I think it's all to do with short-term thinking. So if people are in this it's very easy to tell the people that are in this for the long term, you know, and it's easy to tell people who just want short-term stuff. And some of those short-term people turn into long-term people, which is really nice. But yeah, I really don't have anything negative. I love what I do. I love it more than ever. What I would say is, both of us are guilty of doing too much.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe try not to do too much. That would probably be a tip.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, of all the things, like, because you've talked a lot about what you're seeing happen and some of the different areas you want to go, what are you most excited about doing with your stories and with your work? Like, what are you like, oh, I'm so glad that I get to do this next?
I literally am still doing the same thing. I'm just writing another book and doing another podcast. I mean, maybe I'm just super boring, but I still like writing books and podcasting. I mean, I would like I said, to write an audio drama or something. I'd like to win a literary prize, but that's something that's very difficult. You know, I'm award nominated for the International Thriller Writers Award. So, but I think that these are creative goals that can happen over the next 45 years. I'm pretty sure at some point, hopefully, I'll win something.
As long as you keep writing and podcasting, that's it.
Yeah, seriously. And that's, I think, why I've pulled off social media so much as well. It's like, well, how do you want to spend your time?
Not there.
Not there. And it's writing, and I have I have a list. I have my to write list, and it's like 17 deep at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, I'm not great at co-writing like you guys, so I can't do as many books a year as you guys can. So it's like, well, which one do I do? I also desperate to get traveling again. So a lot of my book ideas come from my travels, and I'm pretty much going to run out of that by Christmas. So hopefully the whole pandemic thing will be done. But even, oh look, I haven't checked. This is my sugar skull that I bought in Austin when I met you guys.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's just down the road from where we had dinner that night. I bought that sugar skull. It's been with me. But, you know, traveling is really important to me. So, but no, I mean, maybe that's a good sign, right? That I'm just happy with my life.
Oh, no, absolutely. You remind me, one time Dave and I were talking, and he was just like annoyed with me because he can't get me down. Like, I'm just like bulletproof optimism sometimes. And he goes, I bet you'd be fucking happy if I came over and just popped your balloon. And then, like, I didn't even miss a beat. And I'm like, well, then you could put it in your pocket. and you're like that. You're like, somebody would pop your balloon and you'd be like, well, now it can fit in my pocket. This is
got another balloon.
Yes. So I love that about you. Please don't ever apologize for it.
Being content with what you're doing is the goal. Like, that's what everyone wants, you know, is to be doing something that they love doing enough that it's like, that's it. The day-to-day work is the end goal. And I think that's really
good. I just the enthusiasm with which you approach the craft, but also just kind of the always looking at the horizon. I just really relate to both of those things. And when I was all through middle school and high school, I had subscriptions to all these video game magazines when I used to have time to play video games. And I would always go, they always had their whole stories, and then the last page was what was going to be in next episode or next issue. And I would get the magazine, and before I read anything in the issue, I would go to the last page to see what was coming next month because I'm always interested in what's coming next. And then I would just dive in to the magazine and thoroughly enjoy it. And I feel like you're always like, I want to see what's next, and I'm really, really excited about what's next. And now this is really awesome here. And you just
absolutely.
Really,
it's a good way to be, right? It's a good way to be.
I think it's the best. So yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for joining us on our industry show. Do either of you guys have any last questions?
I'm just so aware of the fact that Joanna has dinner.
Yes, me too. I saw the time, I saw the hour.
Any longer. So no, thank you so much for coming on, Joanna. I think this was it's just such a relief to me almost, because I've been listening to your podcast for years. I was following you before I was following these guys.
Oh, there we go.
And yeah, and so I just it's wonderful to hear you say the same things you were saying back then is exactly the same things you're saying now. Plus you're interested in all this future stuff. So it's not like you're just, hiding under a blanket and just doing one little thing. You really have your finger on the pulse, but you're still sticking to the same principle. So thank you so much for coming on. This was a fantastic episode. And for anyone listening or watching, you can find Joanna's podcast. It's called the Creative Penn podcast, and there's more than 500 episodes now for you to go back through. So
first podcast I ever listened to.
Oh. Well, and
all
also just to say on that, my 500th episode has some clips and all my lessons learned from the last 11 years podcasting. And so that's actually quite a good place to start. Like, don't start episode 1, start episode 500.
Yeah, that's awesome. We should send an email to our list about her 500th episode.
Sure.
That's awesome. Let's do that.
When is it coming out, Joanna?
Oh, it's coming out on Monday. So Monday, the 3rd of August.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, because we're recording this back in the past for all of you watching.
Yes.
I don't know exactly when
Yes, it is now
out.
Officially in the future. Hey, yeah. Joanna, remember that email we sent for your 500th episode?
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome. I hope it was
Thanks so much.
Remember her dinner that got burnt because she kept talking?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna go get the chicken. Thanks so much for having me, guys. It's been great to catch up. Let's do it again.
Yes, absolutely. See you in the future.
Right, thanks. Bye.
Adios.